Joining us, Greg Jarrett. We are now 2 weeks away from the release of the Russia hoax, the illicit scheme to clear Hillary Clinton and frame Donald Trump. By the way, available for pre-sale on Amazon.com. This will become the definitive book on what is the biggest corruption, abuse of power scandal in history. Sara Carter is an investigative reporter, Fox News contributor. All right, so we have a new poll that shows a majority of Americans, Sara, no longer support the Mueller probe. We have new FBI MO suggesting that Mueller may have illegally leaked grand jury material. That's in reference to the Manafort case. We have Giuliani saying he suspects Mueller is covering up anti-Trump text messages that have been sent by his prosecution team. And Giuliani calling the Mueller probe the most corrupt investigation he's ever seen. And now we have 42 people, as we just heard from Devin Nunes, that need to go before the public and make some explanations. This case is just beginning.
It is. And remember, this has been going on for more than a year. This is incredible, Sean. I think one of the biggest things that we're going to be looking for this week is certainly Peter Strzok testifying publicly. He may not say anything. He may say very little, but I think it's very important to have him out there. I also think that Devin Nunes is doing the right thing. He's putting out the names out there that he says need to go public. The American people are so tired of this because I think based on just the last year, based on the information that has come out, Americans are smart. We understand what's going on here, and that's the reason why we haven't stopped going after these stories, the reason we haven't stopped exposing what we see as blatant corruption and evidence that they were actually working against an incoming president and then a duly elected president of the United States. It's actually quite incredible. And I think what Nunes is doing is saying, look, put everybody out there, let them speak publicly. And if they're not going to abide by our demands, get it, the FISA. Go ahead, Mr. President, release all the documents. Let's get that out there so the American public knows once and for all what's going on. This has been going on too long. And like Devin Nunes said, this is the president's job. He is oversight over the DOJ. And if the DOJ is not going to comply, if Rod Rosenstein, if Robert Mueller, if all of these people, if Attorney General Jeff Sessions does not comply with the oversight demands of Congress, then the president has the authority to declassify that, and we have the right to see it.
Let me go to Greg Jarrett. By the way, you're 2 weeks away. I've read the book now in total. It is the defining read on, and the title captures everything, the Russia hoax, the illicit scheme to clear Hillary Clinton and frame Donald Trump. There is so much coming out with the testimony now. Lisa Page behind closed doors. Peter Strzok publicly, although I hear there's maybe some wavering going on behind the scenes. But the title captures exactly what happened.
It's true. Top officials, the highest levels of government, the Department of Justice and the FBI, worked together. They colluded to twist the law and make up facts and exonerate Hillary Clinton, even though she clearly violated multiple federal statutes. And then on the very same day they cleared her, the FBI is meeting in London for the first time with the author of the dossier. And the FBI and the DOJ were off to the races to try to frame Donald Trump for things he did not do. And the dossier was the linchpin. It was phony. It was fabricated from the beginning.
On page 100 to 103, I think this is going to turn out to be key. Did Brennan at the CIA, they never verified or corroborated this and used it as the bulk of information for the dossier. But was Brennan passing this out to be used as political fodder in his role as a CIA director at the time and, the summer leading up to, of course, the FISA warrant?
Yes, you're absolutely correct.
You write about it in the book.
Page 100, it begins, Brennan is the instigator. He gets his hands early on this phony dossier, and he decides this is what we can use to destroy Trump. So he's running all over Capitol Hill, and in particular, he goes over to Harry Reid's office, and on August 25th, And I believe he shows Reid this document and convinces Reid.
Now, we've heard, do we have the exact proof on it? Because we've been hearing about this from the beginning.
We know Reid leaked to the media a letter he sent to Comey on August 27, 2016. And in it, he alleges Trump is colluding with Russia. And he's asking Comey to investigate Trump. Now, look, Reid already knew that the FBI had launched an investigation of Trump, but he wanted it to get leaked out to the media to destroy Trump before the election.
So let's go through the details of this, Sarah. This is the Clinton and the DNC money, which Donna Brazile said that Hillary controls. Hillary campaign, DNC money she controls, funneled through Perkins Coie, a law firm, onto Fusion GPS, an op research firm, which, by the way, is fine. Op research is, something that we see every day in politics. And then they hire Christopher Steele. I didn't think foreign agents were supposed to be involved in the political process. Well, so much for that.
Right.
And he uses his Russian sources and we believe Russian government sources to create a phony dossier that even he, in an interrogatory in Great Britain under the threat of perjury, said was, well, it's not confirmed. I mean, it's kind of 50-50. I don't know if it's true. That became the basis of the FISA warrant. And we had the CIA director literally feeding this to Harry Reid for political purposes.
It's so dangerous, Sean. It is so dangerous to even imagine that this was happening in the United States, that a director of the CIA, which is not supposed to be involved whatsoever by edict in the political process of U.S. politics, basically shopping out a disinformation document by a foreign agent against an incoming president of the United States or a presidential candidate at the time, and then a duly elected incoming president of the United States, it's really unheard of.
Is this any different than what the former Soviet Union would do when they propagandized and lied? Remember, we always would talk about Pravda, state-run television, state-run networks, all designed to brainwash, indoctrinate, disinform, whatever tactics, well, let's put it another way. Purposely, the government and government spies lying to the American people. Is that what happened in America, Sarah Carter?
That's exactly what it is. I mean, when you look at the facts on their face, that the director of the CIA, which, by the way, this former director, Brennan, has not stopped. We've seen his allegations and his disinformation on Twitter throughout the recent months, how he is constantly bad-mouthing and going after President Trump and alluding to some kind of secret information that's out there that we've never seen, no proof whatsoever. But think of the power that this person had. They were the director of the premier intelligence agency in the world. And instead of dealing with overseas threats, instead of dealing with national security issues overseas, they were basically colluding with Russian agents and a foreign British agent to take out the President of the United States.
Stay right there.
How incredible is this story? Because that's really what it was.
Oh, and the evidence is there. And this is what everybody's not getting. And that's why Greg's book is going to be a blockbuster bestseller. And this is why your reporting should get you a Pulitzer. Meanwhile, all I get is trashed every day in the media. So, I've got everything I deserve. It's fine. You two now take the glory. It's about the truth, though. And this is the biggest abuse of power scandal in American history. And the smoking gun evidence does exist. We'll take a quick break. As we continue with Greg Jarrett, his new book coming out just 2 weeks from today, and it is The Russian Hoax, the illicit scheme to clear Hillary Clinton and frame Donald Trump, and also Fox News investigative reporter Sara Carter. They've agreed to actually hang out through the next half hour as we're going to go deeper into this because we're only beginning to touch the surface. So when Page testifies, she is going to be behind closed doors. But Strzok is going in front of the camera, and we'll see him for the first time. And from what I understand is he's in even more trouble than we suspected. Sara Carter.
Yeah, Strzok is in so much trouble, and it's incredible. At first, his attorney was openly saying, he wants to testify publicly, he wants to talk to Congress, he'll be forthcoming, and then we know he went behind closed doors, and they were having a difficult time with him. I don't suspect, and I don't know what Greg's assumption is on this, that he is going to be as forthcoming in front of the public. It's going to be very difficult for him because we have seen too much evidence. There's too much out there. How can he explain this away? Those text messages were very straightforward. I'm sure Greg goes into great detail in his book about them because they're explosive. I mean, he worked directly under former Deputy Director Andrew McCabe and Comey. He was in London. He was central figure in the Hillary Clinton server investigation and the top figure in the Russia investigation. His connections were wide and deep, and he was working in collusion with, Lisa Page, his paramour and lover that he was having an affair with, and she was an attorney at the FBI. And we also know that he had lots of connections in London, and he was able to make things happen. So there's going to be so much more information, so many questions that Congress has of him. And before the public, I think it's going to be really difficult for him to answer those, at least with a straight face.
All right, we'll take a break. We'll continue. Greg and Sarah have agreed to stay with us. Sara Carter, investigative reporter, Fox News contributor. Greg's book out in 2 weeks. The Russia Hoax, the illicit scheme to clear Hillary Clinton, frame Donald Trump, now available online, Hannity.com, Amazon.com, bookstores in 2 weeks. Also, we'll get Greg's preview of tonight's big announcement. The president selects his replacement for Justice Anthony Kennedy on the Supreme Court. Quick break, right back.
Working every day to remember the forgotten man. This is the Sean Hannity Show.
All right, 25 now till the top of the hour. 800-941-SEAN is our toll-free telephone number. We continue with Greg Jarrett. His new book is coming out 2 weeks now from today on Hannity.com, bookstores everywhere, Amazon.com, and it's called The Russian Hoax. The illicit scheme to clear Hillary Clinton, frame Donald Trump. Sara Carter, investigative reporter, Fox News contributor. All right, let me just change topics briefly, and then we're going to get back to Peter Strzok here in just a second. So the president at 9:01:30 Eastern, 6:01:30 Pacific, will announce his choice who he wants to replace on the Supreme Court, replace Anthony Kennedy. What are your thoughts on the names we keep hearing, Greg Jarrett?
Well, Kavanaugh, Barrett, Hardiman, Larson, Kethledge, those are the contenders, reportedly, and you cannot go wrong if you're Donald Trump or ardent conservative with any of them. They're all young. Age 45 is the youngest, Barrett, all the way to 53, Kavanaugh and Hardiman. So they'll be on the court for a long time, and they're all either proven originalists or textualists, and that is what conservatives want and need to replace Anthony Kennedy on the court. So you could put all 5 names up on a dartboard and throw darts, and it doesn't matter where it lands, you're a winner if you're Donald Trump. And they're all conservative, confirmable people, which is important. Now, having said that, some are more easily confirmed than others. For example, Hardiman was confirmed for the appellate court 95-0. So he is probably, in my judgment, the most confirmable, the easiest confirmed. But,
who got 95? Hardiman?
Hardiman, 95-0. Not a single vote against Hardiman. And it's very hard for the U.S. Senate, although the composition is now different. It's very hard.
Why did you support him then and not now?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Which is why, if I'm going for the easiest pick, it's Hardiman. And
he's also Pennsylvania, and he's also, and by the way, serves on the same court, I believe, as the president's sister.
Yeah, she recommended him.
Yeah.
And, look, I look up to my sister, and, I think he looks up to his big sister.
I know that former Senator Santorum is a big supporter of Hardiman, which speaks volumes of I think he goes a long way. Let me ask Sarah one Supreme Court question, because you're roaming the halls of Capitol Hill constantly. What are you hearing in terms of, is there any one name that keeps popping up? It had been all Kavanaugh most of last week, and now things seem to be up in the air, and nobody seems to know which way the president's going to go.
Well, Kavanaugh was certainly being talked about and being discussed, but I think Hardiman is a name that I'm hearing over and over again, so I think Greg is right on the money there. Look, Greg is 100% right. Wherever they throw this dart, it's going to be a win for the president. And the bigger win is his legacy. You know, call it fate, call it what, you know, Justice Kennedy did, you know, by stepping off the bench and allowing the president to pick a new Supreme Court justice. But he is actually building his legacy, and this is a huge legacy to build. It's a huge thing to leave behind, particularly for the Republican, for the conservatives. And this is something that I think people have been waiting for some time. So I think tonight, when he makes this decision, if he picks Hardiman, he'll have a much easier time getting him confirmed. But whoever he picks, he has definitely solidified his legacy, at least with the Supreme Court.
Agree with that. Okay, now let me move on back to our other topic. Where there's going to be a lot of news this week. I mean, a lot of news. I know of at least 2, probably 3 big stories that will be broken this week as it relates to Deep State Gate. And then we've got senior Justice Department prosecutor that it was Andrew Weissmann, Mueller's pit bull, that in fact met with the Associated Press in April of 2016 to discuss so-called circumstances surrounding Paul Manafort's case, which he is the lead counsel on, and that in fact, and then was appointed by Robert Mueller after, but in fact may have been involved in leaking grand jury information and the fact that a grand jury had been convened in the Manafort case. What do we know about this, Sarah? It's your latest column today.
Oh, well, this is big developments. Now, you remember in January, Sean, we first broke the story that Andrew Weissmann had actually met with the Associated Press, that he had this, secret meeting with the Associated Press reporters. It was on April 11th, 2016, and the day after he met with them, the Associated Press broke their big explosive expose on Manafort, talking about his dealings with Ukraine. What was really fascinating about this, remember, at the time, Andrew Weissmann wasn't a part of the special counsel. He was the top prosecutor over at the Justice Department. And now we find, based on the documents submitted by Manafort's attorneys, that it was Weissmann himself who called for that meeting. And during that time, there was a grand jury that had convened about Paul Manafort. So this is really a big deal for them, and they really are making huge strides that they were able to expose this, because now it's going to be up to the judge at the Eastern District here in Virginia. They're going to make the decision, and this judge has tended to be very lenient towards them when it comes to these issues, because he does not want exculpatory evidence withheld, and that was a big deal with Weissmann in the past. Remember, right. Weissmann has been criticized.
Well, the judge has actually said straight up that the judge will decide in this case what is exculpatory and what is not.
Absolutely, and he is going to stick to it. But now we have all this new evidence that is surfacing, and this is important evidence because Andrew Weissmann, according to the FBI agents that were in attendance at this meeting, according to them, Andrew Weissmann did assist these reporters, allegedly headed them in the right direction, talked about Manafort's case. This is something that should not be done. I'm sure Greg can talk about the legal issues surrounding this, but you cannot. This is a grand jury. This is secretive. This is supposed to be secretive, and this is the reason why the FBI, after this meeting, they weren't expecting this meeting to take place. They actually believed that the meeting was set up by the Associated Press, and this is according to my sources, and that the Associated Press was going to actually give them information. And when they got into the meeting, it was none of that. The Associated Press, apparently, according to the sources that I spoke with, were like, we're not here to give you information, we're here to get information. And now we know that Weissmann was the one that set it up. That meeting, I have been told, lasted more than 30 minutes. There were a number of questions being asked by the Associated Press, and apparently and allegedly Weissmann was aiding them and kind of nudging them on in the direction he wanted them to go.
And there's a reason why Weissmann is no longer at the prosecution's table in the Paul Manafort cases anymore.
Well,
He's been kicked off.
He was kicked off. Who kicked him off?
I suspect that Robert Mueller has kicked him off the case because of this and other things. You'll no longer see Weissman
Weissman was leading the charge when Judge Ellis III beat them. I never saw a bigger beatdown, and that is Judge Ellis saying, we all know what you're doing here. We know you're putting the screws to Manafort in the hopes that he's going to sing or compose I interpret to be suborn perjury, to say anything you need to get out of a potential jail sentence. And by the way, how many days now has Paul Manafort been 23 hours a day confined, never convicted of a thing? And by the way, Manafort apparently reached out to a, quote, potential witness that he never even talked to, as I understand it. And what might have been an attempt to get in touch with the person. But putting all of that aside, I mean, Weissman was the lead guy, and they said the reason they want to put the screws to Manafort to make him sing or compose is because they want to either prosecute or get information to impeach Donald Trump.
Yeah, and early on, T.S. Ellis, the judge, said, well, wait a minute. Where did you get this case? Did this case arise from the special counsel investigation? And during courtroom testimony, the prosecutors had to confess, no, it didn't. We dug it out of the dusty archives in the IRS division of the Justice Department.
Yes.
That's right, the Tax Department division. And so the judge said, well, where do you get the authority? You only have authority if something arises out of your assignment as special counsel. Now, in the end, the judge has said, I'm going to let it go forward, but I still have reservations about this. And, Paul Manafort is in solitary confinement behind bars. He's not a violent offender. And this was the decision of the D.C. judge, by the way, not Ellis.
It's to confine him. Listen, if 23 hours in a jail cell and you're not, all you are is charged, you're not convicted of anything, they dug back to 2005 for the very reasons Judge Ellis courageously spoke out about, Sarah. I've got to be honest, they are trying to break him. They're trying to break him.
And they're doing a job of it, because right now he's sitting in Northern Neck Regional Jail in Warsaw, Virginia, and he has only had 23 hours a day of solitary confinement, and only 1 hour outside of that solitary confinement.
That's 1 hour a day. That's it.
That's it. 1 hour a day. He's restricted. He can't even receive electronic communications. His phone calls are restricted to 10 minutes each. This is really an incredible amount of pressure being put on one person who I've been told by sources is not going to cooperate because he has nothing to cooperate on.
Right. Well, this is why the judge said not just sing. Singing would be obviously a tune that you know. Composing would be, what do you want me to say so I can get out of this disastrous situation of 23 hours a day?
Prosecutors know that if you apply enough pressure on somebody financially, on their family, or on them personally, solitary confinement 23 hours a day, that person has a very good likelihood of cracking and signing anything, even a composed statement that is nothing more than a lie.
Sounds a lot like a movie where we watch Americans held abroad or former POWs. I have always said that if a POW being tortured signs a document, they do not deserve to get judged by the American people because of the circumstances under which none of us have ever lived. And
think about this, Sean. They have over 2 million documents that Robert Mueller has produced to his attorneys. On Friday, apparently 50,000 more documents were handed over. This is only weeks before he's supposed to go to trial, and he can't even sit with his attorneys to go over these documents before the trial date. I mean, it's really incredible what they're doing to him.
They didn't have to throw him in solitary confinement behind bars. The D.C. judge in this particular case said, well, I can't take away his cell phone. Yes, Your Honor, you can take away his cell phone. You can confine him to his home with an ankle bracelet, disconnect his computer and his telephones, and take away his cell phones. That would have been the proper thing to do. But this judge did not want to do justice.
Why is it that this stands? At some point, it's almost like this is now, and I thought there was the presumption of innocence. In what way is Paul Manafort a threat to others in society? We're not talking about a mob murderer here. We're not talking about a big time drug dealer here. We're not talking about somebody, a gang member that is seeking vengeance in some way. Right. We're talking about a 2005 tax case.
Right. It's a tax fraud case, and it's absurd and outrageous that he be thrown in jail pending trial for this. There were other ways to handle it, but this just underscores that Manafort cannot get a fair trial in D.C. in front of that particular judge or in front of a D.C. jury. And in fact, the other case in Alexandria, Virginia, he can't get a fair trial there. He gets a fair judge, T.S. Ellis, but they ought to move it to Roanoke, Virginia, where he can get a fair trial.
Now, let me go.
His trial starts July 25th, the first of two trials, and the second one is apparently scheduled for September 17th, and this in Washington, D.C. So you're absolutely right, Greg. There have been a lot of people talking about that needing to be moved.
Yeah. Well, let me ask this, because I think this is very, very important. I just want to know, what are the options that Manafort has at this time?
Well, he's exercising one of them, or actually two of them. He is appealing his confinement, and he has a very solid legal basis for doing that, because this is way over the top abusive by the special counsel and the judge in D.C. And second of all, he is making a motion for moving the venue to, as I said, Roanoke, Virginia, where he can get a fair shot at justice there. Because in D.C. and Alexandria that are so pro-Hillary Clinton, they voted that way, they're anti-Donald Trump. And this is a political case whether you like it or not. He cannot get a fair trial. So those are his two options right now.
All right, I'm going to have to let you both go, but